Before we get started on the execution part, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the main points that I didn't get a chance to really dig deeper into in the first 2 days, and I wanted to just kind of show you what those are. Remember when we talked about harsh light situations and you don't have a diffuser and we can follow the shadow and we can look at the apex and all of that? Imagine in the middle of a pretty high-end wedding and you're in the field and the bride tells you, I don't want to be in this field because I'm hot. 5 minutes is all I can take. And it takes 3 minutes just to walk to the place and you have no time. I wanted to show you not only through the photos that you did, which you obviously did a great job, but here's an example of how much little wrist, arms, little things go on, little finessing goes on. But then look at the shadow of the sun, look at where the sun is coming from, and then take a look at the final photograph. And then I'll show you how I used to handle this in my first couple of years as well. So this is the field which you can see on the TV screen here. And you can see the bride is pretty much really harsh light. Does that look like it's going to be a great photo? Definitely not. And trust me, this is what tests your skills. You're just like, this is not good, but I can solve it. I can solve it. Now that you see a little bit of what's going on, you think you could try to make sense out of this and how that happened, thought process-wise? Can you try it? Anybody?
The diffuser over the top of the right couple.
There was no diffuser.
You were standing in the apex.
That?
The shadow.
Partially. Can you think why I couldn't just stand in the main apex?
They would be too dark, maybe?
You see, this is the thinking that I was talking about. This is the stuff that I sit there and I'm like thinking, looking at the screen going, why, how, why? I see you guys are looking at it.
Did he use part of his turban to kind of block some of the light off her face?
Well, I used his entire face to block.
Okay.
So here's how it kind of went down, okay? We have this situation, correct? Mm-hmm. This is the background. But luckily, this is going to be kind of funny. You only have one light source. The sun is the only light source here. So yeah, it's in a bad position and it's just terrible, but it's only one. You can control one light source. Just think about it. You have the sun is coming from there this way, right? One light source, one person, I would have been able to stand on the apex and just take her photo all day long. It would have looked perfect. As long as you crop the sun out of the frame, right? Because if you show the light source, then that becomes the brightest, not your subjects, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when I had to photograph the bride and groom photos there too, and there was no diffuser, you're in big trouble, you know, and they expected, that was the one time, and they were so excited about me shooting their wedding, I have to come through. So if you have one light source, you notice the groom was wearing a white shirt, a white Indian thing, right? Well, what does white anything mean to you?
Reflect.
It means reflector. When you see these walls at this studio, what do you see?
Reflector.
Yeah, you don't see a wall, do you? You see
a reflector.
a reflector. When I saw his shirt, I was just like, okay, now I have a reflector. I have a sun, I have a reflector. The other thing is, I need to put her face against the sun, but I don't want to put her face where you only show the side of her face, right? Because you want to show kind of in between. So if you do that, you burn the face, unless you put the groom where the burn would be. So you photograph, the burn would have appeared here. The sun is coming from here. So his shirt got a little burnt from the sun, right?
Right.
But her face is perfect because I'm using his face. And now his face is getting completely burnt, but who cares? It's on the side that you don't even see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at this pose, I'm like thinking, and I'm like, I can have them stand next to each other, kind of hug. His face would burn from this side. His face would turn, block her face. She can bring her chin up to get that light coming through from the sky. And then she can have her arms, and all of this looks really beautiful. The sun is behind, you don't see it. So the brightest part of the photo definitely is the sky, but we don't care because the sky is
Overblown.
The same color.
same brightness level all the way through, right? And then they become the biggest, the ones that are in focus. And because this is no longer a problem, they become the brightest. And there is not a single part of their bodies that are burnt with sunlight, even though it was the worst lighting in the world. Nothing. This photo, I have to admit, took me a little while to come up with it. Like I was seriously like looking at it and thinking I need to just, you know that lazy Susan thing? I was just like lazy Susaning this all day long. I was just like, well, for 30 seconds really, but that's a lot for me, right? I was just like, we need to turn your face. I saw the spill of sun into her face. I was like, telling the groom, you have to dig your face deeper into it to hide that sunspot. I didn't tell him why, I just told him to do it. And then at the end, you see how his face is pretty deep in there? He was not that deep, he was kind of separated a little bit. So I was like, deeper. And he was like, I'm pretty deep. I was like, just a little more deeper. And then that cleaned every little section that could have touched their face. So this photo, sometimes people think, oh, you had all this equipment and diffusers and lights. And I'm like, no, I had the camera and the worst lighting situation and no diffuser. And it still turns out this way with 2 people. Okay, so these are kind of things. Okay, I took this photo in, I forgot where, Oaxaca, Mexico. Yay! I took this photo to show an example why students or photographers, when they're trying to learn, they go to the shady area all the time. Have you guys done that before?
Yeah.
Like you look for the shady area, like sun. Oh, shade. Everybody come over here. Come to the shade, everybody. Right? And then what happens with shade? What is the color temperature of shade? It's cool.
Flat, cool.
It's cool, it's ugly, it's flat. It doesn't do you any favors. It's like you being an architect and you're like, let's use plastic for the structure of the building. Yeah, because what is the structure of all photography? Light. So why would you use the worst possible light as the framework for your photograph? Right? Shade is your friend if you use it with the right reflector from the ground. Or if you can combine a reflector from somewhere, get a sunspot, and then put the reflector in that sunspot and reflect light right into them, right? Remember when I explained that little section when there's shade, and then there's a little line where the sun comes through, and then I said to stand close to the line of shade, stand as close as possible to the sun. And if you stand further back from that line, you start getting darker and darker. That reflective light's not getting to your face as much anymore. What do you think of the lighting here?
It's very dark.
It's dull.
It's flat.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Does that look like you're a master? No. Now, Nikki, if you were to look at this door, do you see what I circled?
Yes, because the root.
And Juliana, what does that little circle mean to you now?
Means that the floor can reflect light.
Means
on the
what?
shade. The floor can reflect light towards the shade.
So yeah, you have the perfect combo, and this happens all the time. It's happening right there below that crane. You see that? Yeah. This happens all the time. Now you can put your subjects in the shade, which is not acceptable, unless
the reflection.
you can rebuild that light back, right? You put them in the shade to clean their face and neutralize the light on their face so you don't have sunspots and so forth, right? But then you gotta build the structure of your photograph, right? And that's light. So this sunlight is going to reflect back into whoever you put here, right? So check out the difference between the first photo with all the people and take a look at this one. Look at the way my face is just glowing. You see how it's glowing there? Now this is not a professional camera. This is probably like some point and shoot thing that I told my wife. But I told her to take this picture of me here because I saw this little guy and I was just like, let's go here. And she's like, why? Blah, 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 here. You know what I mean? I stand there in the shade, all that light comes into my face, I glow. Now, how does this apply to your work? It applies every time. because you are going to be in difficult situations, like when you have to take family portraits and so forth. And if you can find a shady spot where everyone's light is clean, but then you can find a spot that has shade and some sun coming through reflecting on them, you're going to think differently now. You're going to be like, let's go here instead of there. So take a look at this now. That's the result of what that looks like.
Beautiful.
Now let me say something real quick. This photo has not been photoshopped in any way, shape, or form. This is straight out of the camera. Yet it looks like they're just, everyone, it has like a personalized light on their face or something. They're glowing. Does that make sense?
And that's from the floor?
That's from the floor. So you see how they're in shade here? What you don't see is the sun is right there. So when I was looking at that, where am I going to take the wedding party photos, I didn't just go to the crappy shady spot. I went to the shady spot that had the sun to reflect light back up. This is what it looked like. Now you can see it, right? This is the sun, this is the shade. To me, that's like music to my ears. I mean, I'm walking around and I'm like, shade, nothing, shade, nothing, nothing, shade, shade, nothing, sun, that's not gonna work. Shade, oh, sun, symmetrical doors, balance. Could it be any better? So I told everybody to just get in there and I took the photograph. Look at the sun. Look how crazy that strong sunlight is. If we could get out of the studio and go outside and you see like downtown Seattle, you're gonna see buildings creating some shade in the floor, and then you're gonna see the line where the sun begins, and you're gonna be like, iPhone picture's gonna look like Hasselblad. Does that make sense? All right. There it is. That's all I needed to see. That little doodle right there. Okay? Can you all see it happening right there too? And look, when the model comes in, look at that reflector over there. Do you see it? See the other side, right next to my friend here. What's your name, my friend? Jacob. Right next to Jacob on his right. You see that reflector? You notice I'm not calling it wood thing. I'm calling it reflector because that's really what it should be to you. It's just a reflector. So we'll put the model there. That whole light's gonna bounce into that reflector. It's gonna bounce back. She's gonna look like a wonderful supermodel. It's gonna be in a really crappy place. Just a corner of the room that nobody even thought about, right? Let's go to this one. Okay. Why is this the most beautiful, perfect setup for a wonderful photograph? Kenna, go ahead. Just kidding. Kid is like, no! Can anybody think, and this is tough, so just give it a shot. Why is this music to my ears again?
Because of the tree that can reflect.
Oh my
the
gosh,
light.
exactly. What's going on with the tree?
It's a reflector.
It's a reflector. But not only that, it's triangulating the light. You have the sun is coming from here, coming into the tree. So that's line one. The reason why I say this is because we're talking about lighting through direction today. The sun hits the tree, and the tree reflects light into those little plants. Does that make sense? Now, if you look at the little plants, you see the soft shadow there that's coming out of the plant? Soft shadow means beautiful light. Harsh shadow means it's going to be exactly that. Too harsh, it's not going to work. And too soft of a shadow, that light's kind of dead. So look at the plant right here and look at the soft shadow on the other side of that plant. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. This shadow here is the perfect softness. When the model comes out, this is a good place, and I can tell just because of the shape of the shadow. The structure of the shadow tells you, if you take a picture of anyone here, they're gonna look like a master photographer took the photograph with the greatest camera in the world. Mm-hmm. Okay, so think about that. Now, if I was to put a light source and make it really harsh, the shape of this plant will be really accented on the wall, which means get away from that shadow. That's not gonna work for you. That's it. Soft shadow, bingo. Harsh shadow, get away from there. Let the shadow speak to you when you're shooting. I mean, we've gone over so many of them. Here it is. This is what it looks like. That's shadow without that triangulation of the sun. So that's just straight out shadow. Do you see how poor, sad, and depressing that little plant looks? And it's a pretty plant. Don't get me wrong. I likey that plant. But it's very sad, right?
Right.
Now let's compare that light to the light with a soft shadow in the back. Ready? Look at this light.
Yeah.
That light is this light right here. Okay. Let's look at the light. Let's look at the here. You guys wonder how I practice? This is an example.
Soft.
Not very good. Not as good. Medium. Better. Does that make sense? You can just keep going. Like, let's see. Not as good as that. That's the best spot. Okay? So, you start training your eyes to see these things. Which one do you like more?
The right.
Right. Right. Right, because it's the right one. It's not a very good joke. It was just kind of like third day lameness, you know, like, right. There's how it looks like. Now, in my book, Picture Perfect Practice, I show a bunch of examples where my wife and I went out for a photo shoot, and I said, don't bring reflectors, don't bring nothing, let's just make it look crazy awesome without nothing. And all I did was looking for the sun hitting a wall, the wall bouncing the light back into me. And that's kind of what I was doing. So another way you can do a little exercise is go outside for 10 minutes and look for sun hitting a wall, and then look opposing that wall, what's in the other side, and take your photo there. Just keep looking for that triangulation of light, okay? You don't need any models, you don't need any equipment, you need your iPhone, your BlackBerry, your iPad, whatever you use, and somebody, and that's it. So, let's apply this on a real job when shadows speak to you. This bride is the bride that I was photographing in the fields. She was coming down the stairs with her father. I'm at the bottom of the stairs staring at her. Like, this is after 15 hours of shooting, by the way. This is like all day Indian weddings, you know what I mean? And I was looking at her, and her father was coming down. And then I noticed when she was at the top of the staircase, that perfect little soft shadow appeared on the right wall. And I was just like, oh, yes! I can take a perfectly good portrait that's gonna look like I'm awesome right there, right? So I asked her to go back upstairs after her father did her deal. And I took this photo, and I realized the shadow there was too harsh. See how the photo doesn't look quite exciting? It's just kind of there. Now, you're probably wondering why, and I can tell you right now why. It's because the direction of light, the way that light's hitting her, is creating a strong shadow, not that softness that I saw. So what the heck is going on? So I had to switch her, move her, to get that soft shadow to appear. There is us testing the light, figuring out where that shadow is. Now, do you see the shadow's a lot softer? Okay, that's us testing it. There's the shadow. That's what I like. I stood from the bottom of the stairs where I saw it, and this is the final photograph. Look at the light now. It looks really like a crazy portrait in a super nice studio. No, it was halfway in her staircase, right? But that's what that looks like. Okay, remember yesterday we spoke a lot about using the tree branches as frames? Why not using people as frames too? You can frame with people as well. You know when there's people dancing, like the bride and groom are dancing or whatever, and you have all these people dancing? Sometimes I look for everyone being around the bride, and I take a picture of just the frame of all the people, and they're like lonely by themselves. So I took that idea to a different level, and I just started thinking, in this photograph that you're gonna see soon, the father was getting ready, the two sons were right there, and I said, your boys are cute, but they're not boys to me now, they're just framing devices. And so I said, framing device number 1, framing device number 2? Please come and go to the stage. And they were like, what? My name is Tony. No, no, no. Your name is framing device number 1. You're framing device number 2. Come close, right? And perfect silhouette, Jamar. Perfect silhouette. This one. You see the flash hitting the father, so he becomes the brightest, right?
And that's where he's.
There is the 2 sounds.
Let
me see. Totally straight.
1186.
Right there, right there.
1186, right?
And that's a little weird.
You are?
Who's that? Mo.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mo.
Here's the photograph. So the father definitely liked it because it's emotional for him, right? He's getting married. I mean, he's not happy right there, but that's okay. He's just kind of in his mind, right? And then his kids are just right there. And it's an idea that came from the stuff around you. Framing with the tree, framing with that white thing that we saw outside. What is that? Like a little bench. Framing with that, or framing with people. I mean, if I have, let's see, Mallory, can you stand up for a sec? And let's see, Nikki stand up for a sec, and Fran come up for a sec. So Mallory is the person I want to photograph. I want to put emphasis on her, but I don't want a flat picture. I can create depth using you guys. You guys become my depth objects. That's it. So stand right over here. Stand right over here. Now you're the background. See that blue wall right there? That's really the background, but you're going to take a step this way so I can see the black. Now you have nothing but blue in the background. Does that make sense? You're going to come over here and come here, friend, for a sec. Stand right here and keep looking this way and bring your chin to those shutters. And you are just like putting on your sweater. You're doing whatever with your hands. You're preoccupied, okay? You are preoccupied looking at Juliana. It doesn't really matter. Now what I just did, I just framed you with your faces. I'm pointing your nose towards Mallory and I'm pointing yours in this direction. So now you have nose number 1 going this way, nose number 2 over there with Nikki going that way. And guess what? Those 2 noses, they hit. See what I'm saying? Now let's make a small mistake. Mallory's nose is going this way. Let's put Nikki's nose this way too. Now you have 2 people with the same level of importance and the 2 noses are going in the same direction. It's distracting. So let's turn your face this way. Now it's opposing and the attention goes right back to her. Does that make sense? I come over here. I have the blue wall in the background, right? So it's seamless in the back. And Mallory, come in and look at me. Just look straight at me. I can shoot right through you. You become the foreground. You become the middle ground. You become the background. And on top of that, I created frames. And I center the attention right to her because of your nose direction. Does that make sense?